This is what we know so far. A Russian nuclear submarine caught fire while operating in the Barents Sea. Now, that's a coast off of northern Russia. The nearest countries are Finland and Switzerland. 14 Russian sailors died trying to extinguish that fire that was reportedly localized in the battery compartment. The sailors were credited by the Russians for preventing, quote, a catastrophe of planetary scale. Now, how is that possible? Well, the first thing we all think of is the word nuclear, submarine, fire. It's another Chernobyl, right? But if you were listening to yesterday's program, you know that most of what HBO showed was hysteria. All right. This is misinformation. This is disinformation. A global catastrophe like Chernobyl is not possible. Now, this is going to sound unsettling, but it's actually not. There are currently 9 nuclear submarines sunk at the bottom of the ocean. There's one right now just off the east coast of Cape Cod. It's been there since 1963. In all, there are 2 U.S. and 7 Soviet or Russian nuclear subs sitting at the ocean floor. So what happens to the reactors? How come the reactors haven't, had the China syndrome? Well, it's the ocean waters, and they're providing a source of infinite cooling, so they'll never explode. So no, the Russian sailors, although very brave and heroic for, perishing to save their ship, did not save the world from a planetary scale disaster. This, again, is disinformation. It's misdirection. Look over here, look over here. If attention is being diverted intentionally, what's the real story? Attention is being moved through misdirection to get you off of the trail of the Russian submarine. Now, this submarine is very special. It's much smaller than the typical submarine. With its nuclear reactor, it can stay submerged for very long periods of time. It is considered one of the quietest submarines in the Russian fleet, and it was built to go much deeper than any other underwater submersible with 2 separate ship hulls. So in other words, imagine almost like a catamaran. It's got 2 hulls of 2 ships, 2 submarines linked together. Now, why would the Russians want a small nuclear power submarine that can skirt the ocean floor for long periods of time? And why is this project so secret? Well, I think most everybody except this audience is going to be really surprised when the next great war between major powers breaks out. I have talked to you for a long time about being prepared. Being prepared, save food, store water, gas, secure some sort of power source, get off the grid. Why? Because World War III, or the next major war, is going to be unlike anything we've ever fought before. It is cyber warfare. Remember, World War I was unlike any war the world had ever fought before. It was the introduction of tanks. There were, at the end of World War I, there were almost no horses left anywhere in Europe because everybody grabbed their horse and they went to war. Well, a horse isn't going to stand up against a tank, and so most of the horses were slaughtered in Europe. Also, the introduction of chemical warfare and gas warfare that had never been seen before, and it shocked the world. This time, cyber warfare is going to shock the world. And it's going to shock the world because everything is going to change. If you would look at a map of the ocean floor today, it would almost look like a giant circuit board. Underwater communication cables stretch out from New York all the way to Europe, from the West Coast to Asia, and literally everywhere in between. It's how we are so interconnected. It's how you can Skype with someone in Africa or visit a website in Poland. And the underwater circuit board, if you will, began a long, long time ago in 1854 with the installation of the first transatlantic telegraph cable. These communication lines have been laid for decades, and they have been targets for decades. They've been target for spies ever since. Think about it with just the telegraph cable. If you're Germans and you wanted to hear what America and England were talking about in World War I, all you have to do is just tap into the telegraph table, right? Well, that's what this is. During the Cold War, a U.S. submarine, the USS Halibut, successfully located and tapped a Soviet line during Operation Ivy Bells. That is the foreshadowing of what is coming now. Our interconnected world depends on the flow of ones and zeros. And they are currently racing at the speed of light under our oceans. This Russian submarine was built to take advantage of that. They can locate and attach themselves to these deep cables. They can siphon off all of the information. They can insert malware to attack anything from the electrical grid to the water supply stations to the Defense Department. And when the information has all been stolen and the weapons have all been unleashed, they can sever the cables and leave us in the dark. This is modern-day warfare, deep under the sea, which is as unknown to most people as the dark side of the moon. This will be a first strike weapon, and I don't think we're anywhere close to understanding it as people. I hope our Pentagon is on it. I'm sure they are.